This week's episode is sponsored by Aura Entertainment's new survival thriller and killer hippo creature feature, Hungry. Written and directed by James Nunn, Hungry plunges a group of thrill-seeking tourists into the dangerous Louisiana swamplands, where a riverboat tour promising an exclusive adventure takes a terrifying turn. Stranded deep in the bayou, they're forced into an impossible fight for survival against a ravenous hippopotamus hiding beneath the murky water. Part animal horror, part survival horror, Hungry turns one of nature's deadliest predators into pure cinematic terror. This hippo isn't playing games. Hungry is now available on digital. Welcome to Scare You to Sleep. I'm your host, Shelby Novak, and I'm here to tell you of some strange things I've found in the dark cracks and crevices of Reddit.com. This time, I was in the mood for another theme. I saw Disclosure Day recently. I'm not sponsored by them, by the way. I wish, but since seeing it, I have had aliens on the brain. Extraterrestrials are one of my biggest fears. Just the thought of them used to send me into like a deep, dark existential crisis. Like when I was a child, it would freak me out so bad, just the thought of them, because it was like you were thinking about the meaning of life and if there was any meaning at all. But maybe with enough exposure therapy, I can cure that. I don't know, though. When I was compiling all these, I was getting pretty freaked out. So let's see what people have to say about aliens, shall we? Oh, and before we begin, I did want to say that Ted the Caver is officially fully complete. I did have a couple of you saying you were holding off on joining Patreon until all parts of Ted the Caver were out. They are all out now. And it's in its own collection as well. And I also have put a price on the collection. So if for some reason you're just not in the mood for another subscription, I understand. You can go just buy Ted the Caver. It's like, I want to say like 3 hours of content. So yeah, it is there for you. Patreon.com/scareyoutosleep. So enjoy all of Ted the Caver. And we are going to enjoy some aliens. This first post is from the subreddit Alien Abductions. I have followed this sub for years, and it's pretty eerie. It's mostly photos. A lot of people submit strange marks they find on their bodies and ask if it's evidence of aliens. There are a lot of, it's 3 dots that make a triangle. There's a lot of that going on. Some of the wounds do get pretty gnarly, I will say. And no, in case you were wondering, I don't think most of them were done by aliens. I think most of them are explainable wounds, or unfortunately, it does seem like maybe some posters almost seem to have harmed themselves on purpose for internet clout, or out of a desperate bid to find community, maybe. I don't know. But I just wanted to put that out there. I don't believe everything I read online, but I do find it fascinating. So this post I'm going to read was from 3 years ago. This was posted by user This Vermicelli 4127. I fear for my life daily. I need to know I'm okay. I'd prefer to remain anonymous when telling this story, but I'll give a few relevant details about my identity. I'm 38 years old and have been a truck driver for about 11 years. I had a traumatizing experience that I haven't been able to explain or share until now. It's been haunting me bad ever since it happened, and I feel like I need to tell someone. On June 15th of 2020, I was driving later than I like. It was after midnight. going down Highway 67 on my way to a Love's rest area when my radio started giving static. It happens a lot on the road, but this was stronger and it wasn't stopping. Out of nowhere, all the streetlights within my view shut off at the same time. It was pitch black then. Just after the lights went out, I saw this big, dark triangle object hanging in the air right above the road ahead of me. It had lights all over the bottom that looked like they were alternating. I got a sinking feeling in my stomach real quick when I saw that thing. But before I could hit the brakes, everything became really cold and went suddenly dark. It was like something hit me over the head and knocked me clean out. The next memory I have after that point was in a big, bright, metallic chamber. The walls were mostly smooth, and they met at the top with a point, like the inside of a pyramid, but the corners began to soften and form a sort of cone shape at their peak. I was literally paralyzed, unable to move, floating at an angle in a strange, warm liquid. When my eyes focused, I saw the beings. They had arms and legs like people, with long heads and clear skin. I could almost see through them. There were 5 of the things. They were just observing me from the corners of the room, but I felt threatened and nauseous. They came up to me and put their hands in the liquid around me, pulling me down a short hallway into a room with big foreign machines and what looked like counters connecting them. They put me into a machine that looked sort of like an upright CT scanner. One of them had this faint white glowing orb in his hand, and when they had fastened me in the machine, he stuck the thing right in my mouth. After that, I felt a searing pain shoot through my whole body, and I started dreaming, or at least felt like I was dreaming. I just had horrible, vivid nightmares, one after the other, full of twisted shapes and a deep feeling of dread. Those creatures were there in the dreams too, just watching me. They were looking directly at my eyes as if they were watching my soul. But they didn't seem to care at all how scared I was. When I tried to scream, one of the beings stepped up really close to me and pushed the glowing ball that was in my mouth down my throat. I don't remember anything else that happened after that. I just woke up back on the highway, laying in the middle of the asphalt. I got up off the road and onto the shoulder as quick as I could before any cars came through. Just ahead of me, I could see through a big gap in the guardrails that my truck was flipped over in the ditch. I guess it continued on its own after I was taken and plowed through the guardrails. After I got myself back together, I walked the rest of the way to the Loves and called the police and told them about the wreck, but not about how it had happened. Some of the police checked the crash site, and 2 of them talked to me in person at the rest area. I had no injuries on me, but they drove me to the emergency room anyway because of the severity of the truck's condition. Every day since that night, I've lived in constant fear. I don't know what they did to me or why they took me, but I've been seeing them in my nightmares and in ordinary things around me ever since. As requested, here's a drawing of one of the beings I saw. The user answered a few questions in the comments. He said he hadn't had any more contact with the aliens, but he did see them in his dreams, that he could not see their organs through their skin, and felt comforted that some said they think the encounter was a benevolent one. His last post was the drawing of the alien, which is linked in the show notes if you want to see it. He had one more comment that was on a different post where he told someone to make peace with the fact that they were ugly and to find like a fellow ugly person and be happy. But then he never returned to Reddit, at least under that username, ever again. This story definitely stood out to me because of the actual physical consequences. I mean, a whole big rig like crashing through some guardrails, that's interesting. I wonder if some Reddit sleuths could possibly track down that accident to see if this was real. I don't know. I feel for the person. I can't imagine having experience. I mean, whether it's even aliens or not, whether if it's something he experienced because of the crash, some sort of mental thing, to have those nightmares be plagued like that. I hope he found peace at some point. Here's another interesting encounter from the alien abduction subreddit from user Nightshade09. This was posted 2 years ago. Sharing my abduction story from 1970s. Back in the early 1970s, during the UFO wave of 74, 2 of my brothers were living at home while in college. They were heavy into UFO investigations with MUFON and legendary NICAP UFO investigation organizations. My brothers got tired of being there after the fact and taking down pages of interviews and scientific dates on any trace evidence. So they got it into their heads to put their extensive knowledge of amateur radio, electronics, astronomy, and UFOs to good use. They mapped out sighting hotspots and would go out to those locations to camp out. When they spotted anything interesting, they attempted to make contact. It ultimately worked, and their new little friends and those saucers tracked them back to our typical family home in the suburbs. The airspace above our home became a weekly UFO sighting hotspot, so much so that it caught the interest of unmarked military surveillance and later the authentic men in black. Meanwhile, in the wee hours of the night or morning, we would have visitors. I was involved in 2 of those visits as a 6 and later 8-year-old. I woke up in the 2 a.m. to 3 a.m. hour twice to find an intense blue light shining in from all windows of the house and in the shadows. It is within the house. The shadows moved with small figures not of this earth. I ran into my parents' bedroom in a panic and grabbed my father's foot to shake him awake, only to find his entire body move or slide across the surface of the mattress, as weightless as a balloon. I tried again, the same response. I ran around the bed to my mother to shake her awake. She was lying on her side, her face facing me. Her eyes were completely open, and tears were streaming down her cheek. And she was just as weightless and frozen stiff as my father. I ran out of the room now and panicked into my brother's bedroom. Both of them are the same, this time facing up, stiff as boards in their twin beds, and finally to my sister's room. She was 4 years older than me. My sister's eyes were open, and she was frozen stiff in bed, face up. Panicked and now in hysterics, I backed out into the hallway, weeping and hyperventilating, because over my shoulder down the hall and into the living room, some 20 feet away, the shadows were coming at me from every corner. I ran back into my parents' bedroom, grabbing their feet at the foot of the bed, screaming, "Mama, Papa, Mama, Papa." In the panic, I made a last attempt to get some help. In my mind, screaming, my conscience told me over and over again, they are all dead. That is when I felt 2 small hands come across the top of my shoulders from behind. 4 fingers each dug into my shoulders. By the grip, they had a delicate female feel to them, but extremely elongated, and I heard a female voice, gentle as an angel, say, "They are all right, little one." The instant I heard that voice, I went limp. The hysterics, the pain, and the sheer horror of the moment vanquished and disappeared as if it never existed. Even though facing forward, I watched as my parents' weightless bodies floated back and forth on top of their sheetless bed. Subsiding from my shaking, then moments before, I was now just a silent observer, as if I were watching the scene unfold from above. My body is limp in the grip of this unseen being, limp without any free will or even the ability to move. She continued, "They are only sleeping. All is fine." You shouldn't be up to see this." I was escorted across the room. We had a 3-bedroom, 1-story, typical suburban ranch. Being the youngest, I was forced to have a corner of my parents' bedroom. The room was divided by a fold-out wooden partition, though this night it was down. It escorted me across the room from behind, guiding me and pushing me forwards towards my bed, repeating the above line. Finally escorted to my bed, I was turned around and sat on the edge of my bed until I faced it face to face. As to what I saw before me, it's on the cover of Whitney Strieber's Communion. She reiterated the above a 3rd time, adding, "Now, back to sleep with you." I smiled at her and obeyed completely under her control. I swung my feet up into my bed, still sitting up. I turned to her one last time, smiled again, and when I turned around in bed, looking down, I saw something I cannot explain, which will sound unbelievable to any reader reading this, including you. I saw my body still in a bed, and as I laid back down into it, and I went back to sleep. The next morning, I woke up at noon. My mother is shaking me awake. Since I had never slept so long and missed my Saturday morning ritual of cartoon watching, I woke up before everyone else and had my snack set out for the whole Saturday morning cartoon watching ritual. It was noon, and my mom was a bit panicked at my not waking up, but finally, she relieved. I did try to tell my parents what had happened, but parents, being parents, are confronted with such a story. It was just a dream. My brothers, though, turned pale as sheets. They have had similar events, which I learned about much later. Again, this was 1974, before the UFO phenomenon became a subject of popular media and public consciousness. The UFO subject was still rather underground. I did have a second encounter with the night visitors, as we call them. I again woke in the middle of a possible abduction of my entire family. She was again there, but this time it was rather peaceful. It was playful and surprising in that I was surprised she was here again, and I got a very distinct sense of amusement from her. And she kindly ordered me to go back to bed on my own this time, and I did it without question or putting up a fight. Of course, my mother was across the room, her eyes open, her face frozen in panic, and a silent, frozen scream across her face. Those are but 2 of dozens of UFO-related encounters my family had throughout the 1970s, 2 of 4 things that personally happened to me. The 2 others did not involve a face-to-face encounter. Those 2 events, those 2 fully conscious memories and body-feel memories altered my entire life. In the late 1980s, I entered college myself, cultural anthropology degree. I also joined MUFON as an investigator and several other formal academic-based organizations in the paranormal, which I will not name here, and for the sake of their tenure and academic reputations, I wouldn't like to be named, all in the hopes of finding answers. Personal answers and truths as to what my entire family and I experienced. In the decades since the on and off investigation, I have come in contact with and interviewed true military intelligence operators, people in the know, and even former Apollo astronauts, which, by the way, will talk only if their stories will never come to light to the larger public. People will be people, and even if NDAs are involved, humans are, after all, notorious gossips. Over a backyard barbecue or sharing a few beers over a mutually enjoyed big game, they will tell you everything when they absolutely trust you as a friend. I can tell you this: David Jacobs is not entirely alarmist in his hypothesis, nor is Richard Dolan's and Dr. Steve Greer's argument for purely benevolent visitors entirely true. As benevolent as that female voice and being were to me, I will forever see the silent, tearful, frozen scream of my mother and sister's faces over that visitor's shoulders. We must keep an open mind when it comes to this phenomenon and examine all possibilities. After all, we are dealing with something totally alien and totally foreign. And the likes of the late Stephen Hawking are entirely correct. As we know from history, when the Spanish landed in the New World, North America, it did not go well for the native population. 56, anthropology degree holder, male. This week's episode is sponsored by Aura Entertainment's new survival thriller and killer hippo creature feature, Hungry. Written and directed by James Nunn, Hungry plunges a group of thrill-seeking tourists into the dangerous Louisiana swamplands, where a riverboat tour promising an exclusive adventure takes a terrifying turn. Stranded deep in the bayou, they're forced into an impossible fight for survival against a ravenous hippopotamus hiding beneath the murky water. Part animal horror, part survival horror, Hungry turns one of nature's deadliest predators into pure cinematic terror. This hippo isn't playing games. Hungry is now available on digital. So what do you think of, what was his name? Vermicelli? Something? What do you think of his story? Do you think it was just dreams? Do you think it was an alien? It's interesting, the female voice that was really soothing, because there are some people who believe that the visits from angels are actually aliens. It's like a pretty common theory amongst the UAP crowd, is that all the interactions with angels from the Bible are actually with aliens. And so it's interesting to hear it described as a soothing voice who was able to tell him what to do. Because, isn't that kind of what angels are? I don't know. I'm not an expert on angels or aliens. Angels or aliens. That feels like a show that would be on the History Channel. Okay, we're going to move on to a different subreddit called Experiencers. Now this subreddit is a truly fascinating place to scroll through if you're looking to expand your interest in the strange, past ghosts and cryptids into the real weird stuff. Ghosts and cryptids are day one. Just that's paranormal 101. If you want to get into the real strange stuff, you gotta expand beyond that, and Experiencers is a good place to go. Let me read you a description of the subreddit to give you a better idea of what I'm talking about. A safe space for experiencer-related discussions. NHI contact HICE/CE5. Abductions, metaphysical experiences, telepathic, psionic, OBEs, NDEs, STEs, mediumship, astral projection, precognition, etc. A place for genuine, supportive discussion, free from cynicism and aggressive skepticism. Such experiences illustrate important revelations about humanity and the reality we are in, and it is important to have spaces that allow people to talk about them openly. This is important. This means something. So that is the introduction to the Experiencer subreddit. That reminds me, one thing about this crowd is they love their acronyms. In fact, there were some from the previous story I wanted to explain to you if you are a newbie. So let me give you a little class in what some of these mean. So our previous poster had said something about the organization MUFON. And MUFON is short for the Mutual Unidentified Flying Object Network. It is a U.S.-based nonprofit organization composed of civilian volunteers who study reported UFO sightings. It is one of the oldest and largest organizations of its kind, claiming more than 4,000 members worldwide, with chapters and representatives in more than 43 countries and all 50 United States, and it was founded on May 31st, 1969 in Quincy, Illinois. Their current headquarters are in Cincinnati, Ohio. And yes, you too. You can join MUFON if you'd like. And I previously used the term UAP, and so I'll tell you what that means. It stands for, there are two ways to explain what UAP is. One is unidentified anomalous phenomena, or, this formerly unidentified aerial phenomena. So that's kind of what people use more often these days to replace the term UFO, which of course is unidentified flying object. UFO is so passe. We use UAP now, you guys. So just so you know, if you hear UAP when you're on your journey of weirdness, that's what it is, unidentified anomalous phenomena. And of course, they threw a few of these acronyms at us for the experiencer subreddit explanation. The first one being NHI. NHI comes up a lot, and that simply stands for non-human intelligence. It's, people have started using that instead of alien or extraterrestrial. And the reason is, it freaks me out. If you're sitting in there, if you've heard me do a lot of these Dark Reddit episodes and True Story episodes, and you're like, wow, you're kind of a scaredy cat. I am. I will admit it. But the reason non-human intelligence instead of alien or extraterrestrial is because a lot of people think that they're already here. As in, like, in the oceans or among us. And they're not necessarily. Some of them are, but not all of them are from outer space. So we've started using, I keep saying we, as I'm really not very adept at any of this UAP stuff. I'm on the outskirts. It fascinates me, but then I freak myself out. So I'm not very, I'm familiar with these terms just because I'm into weird stuff, but I am by no means an expert. I won't go over all of these. I feel like I'm throwing like vocab words at you. Like this isn't a school session, but I'll give you this one as well. And it was HICE/CE5. And that is, the HICE is Human Initiated Contact Experiences. The CE5 is Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind. And I'm sure you've heard of the fourth kind because of the movie. The fifth kind refers to proactive human-initiated communication with extraterrestrial life or advanced civilizations. Unlike the first four encounter categories, which are typically passive observations of UFOs or aliens, CE5 relies on meditation, consciousness, and peaceful intentions to deliberately signal and attract extraterrestrial beings. And now that we've had our little class, let's actually see what has been posted in the subreddit Experiencers. So this was posted 3 years ago by user Tuzahu, and they titled it Terminally Ill Children Seeing Greys. Greys is a type of alien. It's the more typical one you've heard of with the big head and the big eyes. That's what a gray is. I just retired after 40 years as an RN. 17 of those years I was a hospice nurse. I worked in a 10-bed inpatient unit providing mostly end-of-life care. Most of our patients came to die. The average life expectancy was 72 hours. Many of my patients had apparitions they saw, and many the staff saw too. The descriptions mostly of family they knew, beings of light and shadow. 5 of those 17 years as a hospice RN, I worked in a 10-bed pediatric hospice unit, patients from newborn to 17 years old. If we weren't full of children, we'd also take adult patients at that facility. Medicine tends to hang on to the last minute on children before releasing them to our hospice unit. We would move in the patient and also the family to both get support from our staff. Of the child patients that were speaking, Due to age or disease process, exclusively the children saw what we would call the gray, standing or walking around the foot of their beds. One of the rooms, we had 3 beds with partitions between the beds, but a large family area where we could see all 3 patients at the same time. These were mostly high acuity patients that needed frequent nursing intervention. On many occasions, when we had lucid patients, they would see the same gray at the same time. I had many of the children tell me they were standing next to me, but I never did see them. I did see some spirits from my adult patients, but not the grays the children saw. Most of the children were amused by them. Some laughed, some were frightened of them. Several of the children would draw a picture of them, 4 feet tall, big eyes, long heads, long arms and fingers. It was so common. Grays and sometimes cats. That's what they saw mostly. The children saw other things too. People, white and dark mists, and forms. But the gray was the most common. On many occasions with the pediatrics, we, the staff, would see the light and dark forms move, like walking and leaving a bit of a trail behind them. But never the grays. Would anyone have any account for that? Were they grays or some spirit that the children saw nearing death, but not adults? I'm starting to record my accounts of some of my sightings. Here's a link to one special patient. I saw her spirit before and after her death. She was an adult. David Parker, Phoenix, Arizona, and there's a link to his YouTube channel. I found that story so fascinating and so, sad, of course. Anything to do with hospice care, especially pediatric hospice, is so sad. But I always find stories from hospice nurses or workers in general to be really fascinating. They have some of the most fascinating stories. There was a radio rental episode, I remember, and I think it was a hospice worker, and they had this story that kind of sat with me for a long time. But I've never heard anything like this. I've heard so many ghost stories from hospice facilities and care workers, but I've never heard anything about grays, like a very specific type of alien. And I just had to share this one. I don't know. What do you all think? What do you think it is? Do you think... Because the key said the kids would all see one at the same time, and I have no idea. So there's that to put into your noggin. To round us out here on this special episode of Dark Reddit that is coming out on a weird day and is a weird topic. I mean, not that aliens are that weird of a topic, but I don't know. We're getting kind of weird over here for Dark Reddit. Here is a post from good old Ask Reddit. How could I have a Reddit episode without delving into Ask Reddit? That's where so much of the good, juicy stuff is. This was posted 10 years ago in the Ask Reddit subreddit by user Tolochi, who asked, "Serious Redditors who claim to have encountered aliens, what's your story?" Cosmic Dog said, 1999, my friend and I are in the back seat of the car, driving from Boulder to Nederland. We come over a hill, and there appears 3 massive, perfect columns of blue light stretching from the ground to infinite height a few hundred yards off the road. My friend and I start yelling at our friends in the front seat, "Look, look," pointing at them. The friends in the front seat just keep chatting to themselves, completely ignoring us. A few minutes later, after we passed the lights, they finally acknowledged us. They said they did not hear us yelling about UFOs for the past 2 minutes. They said they didn't hear anything from the back seat at all, which would have been impossible. Really fucking weird and frustrating. That's another thing with alien encounter stuff I've noticed frequently is it's like other people around will be like they're checked out or they're like in a state where they don't see what's happening. There was one that I ended up not putting into this episode because it sort of felt like more of a time slip story than an alien one, but it had something to do with that. She thinks it maybe was aliens, but she said like her whole family was like, why were you standing outside for 2 hours? And she was like, I wasn't standing outside for 2 hours. And her husband shows her on the video camera that she'd gone out at night and just stood out in their backyard or something for 2 straight hours. And she doesn't remember that at all. Or she remembers going outside, but she said it felt like a few minutes or something. Really strange stuff. This next one is from Darina? I've posted this before, but I'll do an abbreviated version. This was something that I still can't quite explain, even after trying to come up with rational explanations and posting it on various Reddit threads. I was coming home one night from work at about 2 a.m. I approached a church that I passed every single day. The first weird thing I noticed was a radio tower-esque light hovering above it. It was red and was blinking in an unusual manner. Most radio towers have an alert light that is some kind of pattern to it. This one was just going nuts. The very next thing I noticed was that all of the streetlights in the parking lot were out. This place has a very well-lit parking lot that was completely black. I pulled up to it and immediately hit the brakes. Hovering about 200 feet above the steeple was a long airship with these weird vents protruding off the sides. The vents seemed to be spotlights that was illuminating the churchyard and some of the street. It made no noise, just hovered there like a weird balloon, perfectly silent. It even drifted slightly to one side. I was in shock. I remember sitting there and going, what the fuck is that? I've seen blimps, helicopters, planes. It was none of those. After watching it in shock for what seemed like 20 minutes, but was probably just seconds, it shot off, like 0 to 100 in mere milliseconds. I tried to follow it, but in moments it was a speck, and then it was gone. I told my friends about it, but of course it was one of those, sure conversations, like obviously they don't believe me. I am not into alien conspiracies, nor am I a sky watcher. Had I not seen it with my own eyes, stone sober with the closeness that I did, I wouldn't believe it either. I kick myself for not taking a photo, but my phone at the time was a BlackBerry with a 3-megapixel camera, so it would have just looked like a black blob. Now, it's just another unbelievable story. I believe you, Darina. I don't know what it was. And then, sometimes it's like, is it a government thing? Were they testing a plane? I don't know. Like, I've mentioned 500 million times on this show that I grew up in the middle of the desert, and I know so many people who say they've seen stuff. But it also was near a military base, so I personally have witnessed, driving down there at night, seeing fighter jets doing drills and stuff where they're flying really close to the ground. And there was a time when the government ended up doing a bombing somewhere. And I remember telling a friend, I'm like, they're going to do something soon, because I saw them out there doing drills. And sure enough, we went and did something, as we always do. But yeah, so it's like, is it a military thing? But like I said, so many people I grew up around swore they saw it, because the desert, it seems like that's a great place to see stuff, because there's no forest cover, there's no canopy, it's very clear at night and you can see everything. So I guess it's just like primo for seeing UFOs. Britney Spears saw a UFO, by the way. I don't know if any of you read her memoir. I did, and she has a UFO story in there about being out in the desert. So everybody, I have not, I don't think. I honestly, if I had though, I'd probably make myself forget it, because I would freak out. I'd be like that guy who was like, I have nightmares every single night. That'd be me. Okay, we have one more story, and I will let you go away from alien land, where I've kept you for the last 37 minutes. This was sent in, this is the same Ask Reddit about, have you experienced aliens? This was user the user's name is user number 800. I think it's spelled user no 800, but I think it's supposed to be user number 800. Anyway, about 2 years ago, I was in Naples, Florida with my friend staying at his dad's place. We were on the porch having a smoke around 11 p.m. I was leaning on the railing when suddenly what I thought was a plane in the distance turned toward us. It was flying so low that the front lights blinded us. My friend scrambled for his phone, which turned out to be dead. And I, fearing I would miss it, didn't want to run inside to grab my phone. Though the craft was steadily gliding, it was all happening so fast. As the object got closer, we noticed it was a huge triangle, almost venti black, and had 3 huge circular lights on the bottom. It was so close, just above the trees, right in front of the building. It was so silent. The only thing making sound was the trees rustling below the craft. Then, the huge black triangle motherfucker turned on a dime right in front of us and disappeared over the tops of the buildings. I swear to God this happened. I wouldn't have believed what I saw if I didn't see it with someone else. Terrifying. What do you mean you stood there to watch it? Oh God, I'd be running away. I'd be so scared. So scared. I'd be afraid it was going to hit us. I just told the story about where I grew up and there being a military base nearby. My parents' neighborhood, like this plane crashed into a house near there. Like a military plane. Like fully crashed into a home, and it was a huge fire. It was this huge accident. It was horrific. And so it's like, also, are the military out taking the new technology for a test drive and they almost ran into the house you were standing in? I don't know. Or it was aliens. Which do you choose? I don't know what I choose. What I am going to choose for now is to end this episode. Thank you for coming on this journey of aliens. As I said, I was going to have some extra episodes throughout the next couple weeks. Just, I don't know. I just feel like it. I feel like handing out more stuff. I've just been feeling creative. The creative juices flowing and just feeling like being productive. That's what it is. In this way, in a creative way, in a scare you to sleep way, instead of in a spreadsheets way, like I have been. So thank you for letting me talk about aliens for 40 minutes. Again, remember Ted the Caver is available on Patreon. Patreon.com/scareyoutosleep. If you want to follow the show on all the socials, you can follow it at scareyoutosleep. If you want to follow me personally, you can follow me at Shelby B. Novak. If you want to drop me an anonymous message, a comment, a critique, a question, you can find a link in the show notes to something called NGL. It says, I think, drop me an anonymous question. You can send it there and I will see it. And if you have any stories you'd like submitted to the show, scareyoutosleep@gmail.com. I'm not going to do a whole ramble. You'll have to wait till Friday for that. I'm just going to let you go. Think about UAPs and all the new weird knowledge you have. Go tell your coworkers, tell your friends, tell your parents that we are not alone and they are watching. Go get some sleep. Sweet dreams.